takes a lot of mental work to change your perspective on humanity, essentially.
So the worldview that I think I felt is that, and I see this a lot with clients too, is that the world is fundamentally good. I know that there's bad people in the world, but nobody's really targeting people this way. People don't operate from a place of being completely self-serving or abusive, and they're not trying to manipulate. Yes, people can do it, but it comes from something. And the biggest rock of my world has been that that is absolutely unequivocally not true. And some
Right.
people are just out there operating in a completely different way.
Personality disorders, specifically the cluster B personality disorders, they operate with this dichotomous thinking. If you're currently in their good graces, they're going to shower you with affection and intensity, not necessarily authentic intimacy, but an intensity that feels very good, feels like a high. And then when you fall off the pedestal, which they decide when that happens, then they will devalue and demean you and be very vindictive about it and feel justified in doing it because you let them down, you disappointed them, and nowhere in between. It's all or nothing.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day. I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two, where I share my harrowing escape from Mormon trad wife life. I got a great question yesterday, and I thought it was important enough to answer, but I pushed aside some other content because I know that there are women out there right now that are maybe in this situation. This video comes with a little bit of homework. When you get done watching me, head to the interview with Dr. Salerno that I've linked in the description, and make sure you watch it all in its entirety. Take notes, get his book. It will help you immensely. If I had had this little bit of information that I'm going to share with you, it would have made a considerable difference in my life. Here's our question of the day. If I find myself in an abusive relationship, will therapy help? And if so, what type of therapy? I'm going to give you the same advice that I give to the divorce groups that I run and some of the betrayal trauma groups that I participate in, the advice that I wish I had, the advice that I would give to my own daughters or my sister. Never do couples therapy with an abuser ever for any reason. It's not helpful, it's not going to minimize the abuse, and it has the potential to put you at life-threatening risk. I'll share a little story with you from my own life at the end. Let me tell you first what to do instead, because this is very simple, and then we're going to dive into the why behind no couples therapy. Instead of couples therapy, individual therapy can potentially be helpful. You have a therapist to help you with everything that you're going through to make sure that you have boundaries, to make sure that you understand abuse patterns, trauma bonding, and codependency, enmeshment, things like that. And he's over here with his own therapist. These two don't collaborate in any way, shape, or form. They are not connected, and you're not sharing with him any of your therapy. His therapist is helping him dive into and potentially diagnose mental illness, personality disorders, things like that. Yes, abusers can recover. And if he's getting good professional help over here and maybe learning some skills and coping mechanisms and some emotional regulation that he may have never had in his entire life, he can become a better partner for you or anybody. And if you're over here learning your skills, you can have a dramatic shift in your relationship. I have personally seen some of the worst abusers with mental illnesses, drug abuse, terrible backstory, horrible trauma, unbelievably bad patterns, turn that around and within the same relationship become much better people and have the happily ever after without ever having to get divorced and never abusing again. I will say, though, that that is very rare, and it takes a commitment level from this person over here that you have no control over. So why is couples therapy so dangerous in an abusive relationship? For a very long time, it has always been assumed that most people want to do good, that the intentionality behind most typical human beings, unless you're an extreme psychopath, is to connect with other people, to make their lives better, to be a good partner. In couples therapy, your therapist will come in with just that assumption that both partners equally want the other to be happy and safe, and that both partners are equally to blame for the breakdown in the relationship. And unfortunately, most therapists today are being trained on that old knowledge. New research shows that that's not the case at all, and that there are many individuals who want to harm other people, who get more of a reward from seeing people in pain than they do from seeing people happy and safe. Most therapists are not going to come in with that perspective at all. Here's what Dr. Salerno has to say on that topic.
Couples counseling, I know, can be very invalidating, but there's a lot of therapists that don't know what a trauma bond is, that don't know.
Right.
I hope they know what cognitive dissonance is, but perhaps not in this context and what makes this so hard, which again is why I love that you've coined this term. I hope it really becomes widespread and people understand that I use the word worse, like it's more traumatic, obviously.
And I mean, in defense of therapists, they're trained the way they're trained by who they're trained by. And so we're taught in our majority of the degree programs, we're taught that you pretty much assume collaboration when a client comes to see you and when a couple comes to see you, and you give them unconditional positive regard. And there's this underlying belief that everybody is basically good and they want what's best for other people. And if they don't, it's because something ruptured in their development that made them defensive and self-protective. I'm sorry if people believe that, because it's dangerous to think that now, because now we have research that has proven, it's irrefutable research. It's undeniable. There are certain brains that are wired in certain ways that cause harm intentionally because they perceive that they will have some sort of personal advantage or gain if they go about life that way. And it's not from anything that happened to them. And this is one of the biggest things you asked earlier, like, how do we get people to clear the dissonance? Believing that is possible is a good first step. And that takes a lot of mental work to change your perspective on humanity.
That's why I stopped taking gabapentin.
Watching this really hit home for me, and I took a little time considering my first decade of marriage as a 20-year-old girl. And I led with the assumption that my husband loved me, that he would feel good when I felt good, and that he was a kind, compassionate person capable of empathy. A dangerous thing for me was that everybody around us had that same assumption. Jake's a nice guy. Jake loves Jenny. Jake wants Jenny to be happy. When I would bring episodes of abuse to close, trusted friends, family members, my Mormon bishop, everyone had that assumption, and they reacted to the situation differently than if they had seen that Jake had bad intent. Little things like the first year that we were married, we lived in an apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona that had black widow spiders, scorpions, and cockroaches. And Jake lived to put live bugs on me in vulnerable situations. For instance, when I was in the shower, he would be hanging out, just like doing his hair and stuff. He would know that he had a spider in a jar over here, or he'd see a cockroach crawling on the wall. And he would wait until my eyes were closed shampooing my hair to drop a cockroach, a spider, a scorpion onto me. Also, while I was asleep, putting things on my face, putting dangerous venomous bugs in my hand. And this perspective of assumed positive intent almost ended my life in 2017 when Jake threatened to come home from a road trip, end my life, burn down our condo, end his life. And I took that to my Mormon bishop. The Mormon bishop immediately came in with assumed positive intent. And I know some of you who are new to me are going to be wondering, why didn't she call the police? I do videos on that. I didn't trust the police, but I trusted my Mormon bishop because he had Heavenly Father telling him what to do, like speaking directly into his ear through the Holy Ghost. So I had absolute faith in my priesthood leaders. What my bishop in Ogden, Utah did was, assuming good intent from Jake, he called him on the phone when he got into town the day that Jake had said would be the end of all of our lives. And he said, "Hey, buddy, want to go for a ride with me through the Ogden Canyon?" And Jake would tell me this 2 weeks later when our whole entire life blew up. The bishop took him for a ride and said, "Hey, your wife says that you're abusing her. Please stop that." And then he asked him, "Do you love your wife? Are you committed to your marriage? Can I help you work on your marriage?" Because he had assumed positive intention with a man who only lived to see me harmed. When he got done with Jake, Jake would first go to Salt Lake City, pick up a girl that he and pay to spend the next couple of hours with her in my Mercedes. He would then come home, and that was the day that I experienced the most violent, terrifying, horrendous abuse of my entire 24-year marriage. My life almost ended because my bishop assumed positive intent. My bishop also believed in the power of Jesus to fix everything. So that year, my husband would agree to come to therapy with me. We had 2 sessions with the therapist who again assumed positive intent. Every therapy session led to violent abuse. In the second session, the therapist asked Jake this question. He said, "When you and Jenny have a perceived conflict, What are your thoughts? What do you think? What do you feel? What smells are you smelling? What's going through your mind? And here's what Jake said. He said, anytime there's any kind of conflict or Jenny says anything or does anything that pisses me off, immediately I view us as like a cockfight. Like we're two roosters in a ring in Mexico City with those little machetes on our talons. And all I want to do is like fly at her and like shred her to pieces. I remember the therapist's face on that Zoom call. Here's little blonde me and big, hairy, aggressive looking Jake. The therapist asked my husband, he said, is this like a fight till the death type of fight? Or you just want to hurt her? And then once she's limping, she's going to walk away. And Jake went on to verbalize how that he wanted me bleeding and mangled in a pile of feathers. And then he would stand over my little rooster body, victorious and crow. After that session ended, my therapist would call me back for a private conversation in which he would tell me, you are absolutely not safe in this relationship. You shouldn't be spending the night with him tonight. You shouldn't ever be with him. This man is diabolical and he will kill you. The therapist said, I only see this relationship ending one of three ways. He kills you, you end your own life, or you run. There is no scenario in which you live happily ever after with this man. He is an absolute threat to you and your children and your pets and everything. That session was the end of our couples therapy. We would never sit down together with another professional. And I was unable to run for 3 more years, but our marriage did end in 2018. And thanks to my amazing trauma and abuse therapist, I have been able to rehabilitate and have a thriving, functional relationship. And I know people never want to hear that Jake is happy. Jake never had a chance in life. And since the end of our relationship, I don't like to give specifics, but Jake has gotten help and he is living a much better life than he ever did before. I know there's a real temptation when you're in an abusive relationship to take that partner to a couples therapist just so a professional can see what a monster they are. I don't think that it's ever beneficial. You should never do it. Not ever. Hope this helps, and I will be hanging out in the comments to see what you guys think.